Hi, this is Jim Musser with Upstream Ministries, and this is episode 64 on Views from Downstream. And the last several weeks, we've been talking about assumptions that both parents and churches make about raising kids spiritually and making disciples. And last week, I tried to focus on some positive responses to these assumptions in order to mitigate their effects on raising kids, particularly. And I just want to continue that today and just talk to you, parents, that assume that it's the church and the church's programs who are best capable of leading your kids spiritually. And there's some rationale for that because a lot of parents don't have much experience with the scriptures, do not feel very comfortable with them. And so it makes some sense that you would want to turn that over to the quote unquote professionals. But the reality is that God has set it up so that your children look to you to figure out life, and particularly to figure out who God is and what it is to follow Him. And there's no substitute for your participation in that. And so, in many ways, God has ordained you as an expert in raising your kids spiritually because He's put you in that role. And I've talked before that your response, if you feel uncomfortable with that role, is not to forsake it and contract it out to a church leader or church volunteers that you consider more experienced than you in working with your kids, but it is to work on your deficits that lead you to think you aren't experienced enough. You don't know the Bible, then learn how to study the Bible. Get somebody who knows about the Bible. Meet with them. If it's prayer, then meet with somebody who has a flourishing prayer life that you can learn from. There are all kinds of resources out there for you to become more adept in leading your kids in what it means to follow Jesus. And the reality is, regardless of how busy you are, and I've said this before, this has to be your number one priority, is raising your kids up to show them who God is and what it means to follow Him through Jesus. And you have a very short period of time in which to do that, from basically infancy through probably fifth or sixth grade, and then your influence begins to wane as your child matures. And so you need to take advantage of that time. And I just want to encourage you to begin to prioritize your life, if you have children, around raising them to know Jesus. And it doesn't mean that you have to just stop everything you're doing in order to do that. In fact, that would not show your child how to live out following Jesus. It would be better to have them accompany you on all kinds of things that you're doing so they learn how you handle life situations and begin to internalize what it means to make decisions based on faith. And so I just really want to encourage you to embrace your role as the main influencer spiritually of your child, and not to shirk that responsibility and hand it to somebody else. You need to embrace it and equip yourself with the resources God provides in order to do that. And I'm convinced that if parents will take their role seriously, then they will begin to see a big difference in their kids once they graduate from high school. Because again, as I've said over and over and over again, that's where the rub is. Kids leave high school and then they don't retain their faith. They leave it and walk in a worldly way. And that our goal is to prevent that. And one of the best ways to prevent that is if you as a mom or a dad get involved in influencing your child for the sake of the Lord. So think about that. If you have questions or comments, please feel free to pose those in the below the screen. And we'll be seeing you again on Wednesday to talk more about what assumptions we're making and what we need to do to counteract those assumptions. Until then, have a great day.